throughout the entirety of this movie, I was saying it's got to be a 7, but then once I hit a certain point, it ended up becoming a 7.7, and then by the end, the way they put everything together, I gave it a 7.8, and then most people will be saying that's definitely an 8. So, what I loved about this movie, it's major spoilers, that the concept is based on quantum mechanics, on how electrons move together. Coming out of thin air, and so they created something that has an allusion to real science. And what's really cool is at the end, we find out that this character didn't know he was important, but the whole time he was important. And so you have an allusion to the Harry Potter theme of Strange Loop once again, and Strange Loops are really cool, particularly in this case, because it was a surprise to him that he was actually the one he was working for. He was giving missions to himself in the past. And my question is, does the future really change? Because of him, is he going to create the new world that's not going to be destroyed, or is he going to be the very cause of it? And so certainly I'm sure the director's playing with ideas of making a sequel that's going to delve into this. If you want to make it interesting, you'll have to say in the end he does stop that crazy future that takes place. But in my opinion, what most likely is going to happen, even though the director is not going to go in that direction, is that he actually is the cause for the technology being the way it is in the future that destroys the world. So that's a kind of a sad reality that's most likely. If the director does a good enough job in the second movie, then it'll probably be people will probably believe it and be able to see the truth in it. I don't think it's gonna have a sequel. It didn't really get such good reviews from what I remember. I personally gave it a 7 to an 8, one of these two. But it looks like, I'm going to look it up, it looks like most people did not really like it. Oh wait, Rotten Tomatoes. But in general, most people didn't really. 70%. Okay, so it is 70 to 80% positive. There was a vibe of Inception. Clearly they wanted that kind of, they talked about it, they wanted to make it follow in those footsteps. Nothing to do with Inception. They made it very intense the whole time. It gave you a thriller vibe, which is good. It's good to have movies like that once in a while. But if you're not in the mood for it, it's just going to be annoying. If you don't want to be... It's very successful in taking you on your feet, pulling you in and forcing you to appreciate the intensity. I didn't find it so engaging compared to other movies. Like, Inception was a 9 to 10. This one didn't capture you. There was a lot of spaces in between where you're like, what's going on here? Does this even make sense? Will it make sense in the future? And in the end, it does make sense if you think about it. But what's weird is that it's first-person experience for those going into the past and those going into the future. It's called a temporal something. And that doesn't really make sense logically, except it does from the standpoint of both parties trying to accomplish a specific outcome. And what's interesting and really touches my heart is that the whole time you thought the bad guy was in control. In the end, not only the good guy was in control, but the good guy was in control and he didn't even realize it. And his friend accepted his own fate. His friend accepted his fate. I'm going to die. And he just said, I'm okay with that. What's happened. That's like a repetitive theme that he repeats. And is it true? Is fate real? Those who had mystical consciousness probably believe in this, and I do believe in it, and I understand the paradoxical elements that go into it. Like, you discover a future through a mystical state. So if you know the future, how does knowing the future, is your knowledge of the future now going to be the reason? And then you get like dilemmas, because if you communicated with a creature from the future, how does that make your knowledge real? Like, for me, it's like I practically apply this in my life, but I'm sure people have their own worlds of imagination where they apply it. But even if it wasn't applicable, it's It's amazing. The concept is amazing. The way it was done, it's 7. It's not like a 9. I wouldn't say it's a 9. I wouldn't say it's an 8. But it ended off well enough where you're like, it wasn't a waste of time. I'm glad I watched this.